going to take a moment, Eddie, if you don't mind. I'm going to plug us because a while ago, about a year and a half ago, we did some predictions for how buses would perform in Edmonton. And I just asked my researcher if he could pull up those old numbers. And looking at our numbers, we had predicted 1.5 to 2.2 kilowatt hours per kilometer, and your data shows 1.5 to 2.1 kilowatt hours per kilometer. So I was patting ourselves on the back there for some good predictions. But those kinds of data coming forward are really going to help agencies determine, are you getting what you're being promised? Is it sales or science? And then how much handholding are the OEMs going to provide? So I'm going to start off here with the two biggest agencies that have deployment data. Eddie, can we turn to you first in terms of the kind of handholding? You're getting essentially what you thought you would get, roughly. Are you getting handholding from the OEMs when things don't work out? And in your case, you have one particular large OEM. Are you getting the kind of handholding you need when the integration doesn't work out and systems are down? And we'll just unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, I think we've got great service from our OEM, so I'm not worried about that as much. I think there's some challenges like Ben was referring to around some reliability stuff, but I think that's come in the 20 years I've been in service. It doesn't matter what new bus you're getting, you're going to run into those challenges and issues you got to work out. But certainly they're helping us out through the whole piece of work and looking at what our usage looks like, anything around regenerative braking, adjusting some of that and getting used to what does that mean on ice, and are we getting the value out of that, and getting I think right now we're getting just about 20% return on our regenerative braking, which takes some adjustments and some time to get through it. So through each of those things and working with the OEM is kind of how you kind of refine that tool and get yourself to a point where you're seeing the returns and value you get, but it takes a bit of time to get through that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, that's interesting because we were learning from OEMs that we could program regen up to 35%. So if 20% is learning, 35% is even more drag. That'll be interesting to know. Ben, on your end, with the OEMs and the hand holding, here we're not just talking about the bus, but the chargers and everything at the depot. What about those OEMs hand holding you through problems?
So the chargers, we've been very, I wouldn't just say fortunate, but obviously it comes from a lot of planning, quality engineering, QA, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had about 98% availability of our charging systems thus far. And we've had not one bus fail to meet service because the charging system was down. So of all of the challenges that we were, very concerned about, in fact, that was very high up on the list. And we haven't had any issues with that really, or substantial issues. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we had probably the biggest issue with one of the systems out for, I think it was close to a day, but that was a very unique circumstance, hadn't happened before. And,
okay.
and we've got the root cause of that.
Okay, so if I can set the context, you've got depot charging right now, Ben, and lots of different systems.
Yes.
These have worked well. Eddie, you've got depot charging, but en route capable buses with the overhead robotic capacity. I'm going to turn the question to Anne-Marie now and Vince Roto, because as part of the trial, you've got depot charging, but you've also got en route overhead charging systems. Anne-Marie, let's start with you. You're the only system in the country that has a utility that owns and operates the overhead charger for you on your behalf. So what is the hand holding from the manufacturer? What's been your experience with the utility in doing that kind of arrangement for the charging system?
So our partnership with the utility company is superb. They've been great right from day one. They've come on this journey with us right from the beginning. We don't need a lot of hand holding with them in particular. They help us out with the OEM and tackling some of the issues that we've had from the beginning. And, they started in the beginning, just, it's the construction, installation, waiting for parts, to show up. So, this is something new. So not everything is always readily available, which is what we're finding. And we've had some challenges with bus and overhead charging communication. So different things, since June that have occurred. Most recent one really is, the bus comes in and it, needs a charge, and the overhead charging connects because it's being asked for a charge, but it thinks the bus is asking for too much of a charge, so it shuts down. Right, so that's the most recent issue that we've had, and that's not so much the hydroelectric company issue. That's really an OEM issue between the bus and the overhead charging unit.
Yeah, so it's a lot of new software controls, and although the overhead pantographs are old rail technology, the application to buses is brand new, and so the charging companies are in the middle of a brand new industry to support the uptime of transit. Now, Vince, you've been able to learn from everything YRT and TransLink have gone through, everything Edmonton's gone through, the experience of TTC. What are the challenges you see, and how much support are you getting from manufacturers?
So, I'll answer the question in reverse order. I mean, we really, from a technical perspective, things have been going pretty well. I think, every time any issue crops up at all, the first question is, what are they doing at YRT? What are they doing out in TransLink? What are they doing at TTC? So there have been a lot of lessons learned, I think, in this industry in a very short while. It's been very helpful for us. So, sometimes issues that we knew there were issues elsewhere, by the time they got to us, they seem to have ironed many of those out. So we're good in that respect. We spent a lot of time in the last while, as I said before, with commissioning and safety certification, and training, and plenty of the training is actually done by the OEMs for us, and we're relying very heavily on their knowledge and their skill set to make sure our vehicles are working well, the chargers are working well, our employees are properly trained, even different type of PPE that they need.
Yep. So
we're looking at flammable clothing and things like, the flammability of clothing and things like that. I could make some jokes, but I won't. So there's an awful lot of things because it is so brand new, and we are relying very heavily on our OEMs, and so far they've been coming through for us.
That's fantastic, Vince. So it sounds like a lot of learnings from the other agencies, being able to deploy it here. You segued into the training issue. So Eric, I'm going to turn to you because we have learned a lot over the while. In Quebec, there was a lot more planning earlier than the rest of the country in terms of electrification. That's just a statement of the context in the province. So can you take us through at Laval and the agencies around you? How are you managing the maintenance staff issue? How many people have you trained ahead of time? How hard is it right now? You've got, a dozen buses deployed or so. What are the maintenance issues and the staff training issues?
Yeah, the training issue was almost related, as well as the maintenance crew availability during the last year that we were facing the pandemic as well. So we have to extract that variable, I think, to the equation. So for sure, one of the biggest things that we had to learn is working with two different platforms or two different OEMs. So what I would say the last year, we've been working as much as hard that we were for 10 buses than what we were working for 350 buses during the last year. So as well as what Vince just told previously, we had some EPP adjustments to do as well for having arc flash training, but we already had arc flash for our hybrid buses, but now we're facing some other issues where we have to work into different kind of batteries, and they all suppliers have different EPP or different instructions. So that's what we're struggling as well with that. For the planning of the maintenance crew, we've been working during the last year for that, and what we've just learned is turning them too early or too far from the introduction of it was not a big thing. So we had key champions at the really earlier stage, and now we're having the all electricians that are being trained right now simultaneously, then the introduction to make sure that we can provide the adequate support to the buses.
So training at exactly the right time. And Anne-Marie, there is a query here for you specifically. I believe you're the only agency in this group that outsources a lot of the operations of its buses. So can you take us through how you're managing the training of the staff, the maintenance and technical staff, since it's not necessarily your own unionized labor group, but it's outsourced? How is that working?
It's working great. It's really no different in the end. We see all of our contractors as our partners, and we treat them very much like they're our own. There's a process we go through. There's a chain of command that we follow, but our training of the maintenance staff is relatively the same. So we just work with our contractors to build, what are the training requirements And we build those programs together, and then they just make sure that those programs are administered. We provide oversight to make sure that everything is done the way that we need it to be done. But I think people have to remember the first 2 years, everything is under warranty. So a lot of the maintenance on these vehicles is being done by the OEM. So it's been a great opportunity to make sure that the maintenance staff is working closely with the OEMs. And then, this way, over a 2-year period, they're getting substantial training. And it gives us the opportunity to make sure we have all the right, materials and equipment and everything in place, as we roll out more and more buses going forward.
And there's so many questions, we can't get to them all, but we've gone over time. I'm going to take us 2 more minutes over time and squish in a last query. I'll go to you, Ben, first, and then Eddie, yourself. A lot of questions online about, look, getting to like 10, 20 buses, fine, you can charge overnight. But once you full fleet electrify, you probably don't have enough time at the garage to charge up all the buses overnight in that ideal world of low-cost charging. How are you managing the fact that your schedules or your facility may not allow for charging overnight only? Ben?
Yeah, the reality is it's not really a matter of overnight. You have to do the type of full fleet analysis that Qtrik has done for us in the past, as well as carry-on analysis from there of the type that Vince described, to figure out, based on when the buses are going to be in service, what opportunity is there to charge them to begin with, for the depot charge buses I'm talking about here. And so for those buses at the depot, and to the extent that the charging window extends outside of the low cost electricity usage period, we've added energy storage to allow us to charge the energy storage when it's less expensive, and to dispatch when you need additional capacity, or when you just want to do it more cheaply to charge the buses. And then, of course, ultimately, we think that the future does include a mix of depot charge and en route charge, and hydrogen fuel cell buses to address those longest routes. Right now, our depot charge buses account for about 40% of the routes. We can push that probably 60, 70% over the years as the battery density increases, but we'll still be out en route, or we'll have hydrogen fuel cell for the longest routes.
So getting more energy into the vehicles through the day, there's a 24-hour window, and it can be a limit. And Eddie, how are you guys approaching it in Edmonton? You've got higher power charging at depot, but is it enough in your schedule?
Yeah, I think we're very similar to what Bam is saying. I think there's all sorts of different avenues that we're taking to kind of ensure that we're able to kind of turn that bus around for the next day. We are charging during the day here as well. So when that bus comes back, we're programming what that next run looks like. We're looking at all the charge in all of the buses, and then assigning the bus adequately to the ability to kind of do the work. So we are doing it at night and in daytime as well. So, and like Bam said earlier, the exploration of storage as well, taking that cheap power and storing it and then dumping it to the buses during the daytime is one of those keys. And we are certainly as well looking at that hydrogen possibility. We have great access to hydrogen here in Alberta, and I think that's certainly something that we'll be exploring as part of our options moving forward as well.
Very helpful, Eddie. So we're going to end on last responses by Eddie, Anne-Marie, and Vince. We have a lot of questions about mid-sized transit agencies. So in the question going forward, everybody's looking at a one-to-one diesel bus replacement, but is that really truly the case? So can we ask for your final comments on what is your agency planning for? If it's not a one-to-one diesel bus replacement, what is the replacement ratio you're roughly planning for right now, if you have a sense? And we'll start off, Vince, with yourself at Brampton. Oh, 1 second, Vince, you're on mute.
There you go. Sorry about that. So for us, I think it's really kind of too early to tell. We are already, on the 2 routes we're talking about that will run these 8 buses, we are adding extra time on the route. So we may only be adding on the 1 route, I think it's just 1 more bus in there, and the other route might be 1 or 2. But we're just, it's real early days for us, so I don't think we've figured that out. Those 2 studies we talked about, where you may use them, and what might happen, are going to be real important for us to try and figure that out. So I think, as a going-in position, probably we'd be buying as a minimum. Every time we buy 10 buses, we'd be picking up at least 1 more as a start, and we'll know more as we go along and learn more about this.
So it's about maybe 10% more, and there's no doubt you either increase charging, increase battery, something's got to give in the system. So Eric, over to you. What is your sense at Laval as you ramp up?
At our early stage, where the study shows us that the replacement should be done 1-for-1. As we know, the battery density will increase, so we're pretty much sure that we can do it. We're too early as well to say if it's going to be the case. But for sure, what we do observe is the weight of these buses. They're getting heavier and heavier. So probably we still have a 12-meter bus, but can we put as much people into it as we were used to with diesel buses? So this is some other concerns that we still have. As much as battery density, maybe we'll get weight reduction as well into batteries, so that will enable us to get our activity being done through 112-meter buses. So for the moment, we still think that 1-for-1 is the strategy to go for slow charging at the depot for now.
Okay, so we'll be watching to see if that's a reality. And Anne-Marie, last words to you. What is the plan for replacement ratio or expectations?
Yeah, it's the same as what you've heard already. I mean, we're planning 1-for-1. Again, Vin said it's too early to tell. It really is too early to tell. And, we have almost 600 buses, and, based on the plan that we have in place now to transition our fleet to fully electric, who knows? A lot can happen in the next 20 to 30 years. So, but right now, 1-for-1.
So we'll all aim for the optimal solution and plan for the worst if necessary, but nonetheless, the climate will win in the end. So thank you very much to all of you for joining us. It's been really insightful. I know we have a lot of questions, and we have taken the lesson at our Low Carbon Smart Mobility Conference in June. We will make this an hour-and-a-half panel because there's a lot of empirical queries coming forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go forward and electrify.